In this segment, I will cover two key federal consumer protection laws, the Fair Credit Reporting Act and the Fair and Accurate Credit Transaction Act. These laws were enacted to protect consumers against and guide them through the repercussions of identity fraud. They empower consumers to advocate on their own behalf relating to the storing, sharing, and reporting of their credit and personal information. They also provide free access to the reports that credit bureaus use when providing your personal information. In addition, they place certain responsibilities on these providers and creditors to correct or remove inaccurate or fraudulent information from your credit report. They are the basis of our effective measures in our identity theft risk management program. In the following slides, I will cover the important elements of these two laws in a bullet format that can be easily used for quick reference. The first consumer protection law that we will cover is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It was enacted in 1970, and it regulates the collection, dissemination, and the use of consumer information. It's enforced by the Federal Trade Commission as well as the Consumer Federal Protection Bureau. Its purpose is to promote the accuracy, fairness, and privacy of information that's maintained in credit bureau files, and it also lays the foundation for consumer credit rights in the United States. I will now review the important rights and protections of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. First, you must be told if information in your file has been used against you, such as being denied a loan. Access to your file is generally very limited. Your consent is required for reports provided to employers, and you have a right to know what is in your credit file. You can request your credit file at any time upon providing proper identification. This is known as your file disclosure, and you have a right to know your credit score. You can dispute inaccurate information contained in your credit report. You can delete outdated information, and you can remove your name from marketing lists for unsolicited credit and insurance offers. You're entitled to free reports if any of these terms are met. If incorrect information in your report has caused adverse consequences because you are a victim of identity theft or fraud, if you're receiving public assistance, or you are unemployed and plan to seek employment within the next 60 days. The Fair and Accurate Credit Transaction Act, better known as Facta, was enacted in 2003, and it is an amendment to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Some of the key amendments are as follows. It is designed to prevent identity theft, to allow consumers greater access to their consumer files than initially provided by the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and it sets new standards about what can be included in a consumer report and modifies, in part, the process by which consumers' disputes are handled. Victims of identity theft can place fraud alerts in their credit files, while active duty military personnel, while deployed, can place active duty alerts in theirs. These alerts require creditors to take additional steps in verifying the identity of applicants before issuing credit. You're also entitled to add a credit freeze to your file. If you're a victim of identity theft, it's free. If not, states may charge a small fee. Fraud alerts and credit freezes will be covered in more detail further in this presentation. A credit bureau, such as Equifax, TransUnion, or Experian, that has received a request to place a fraud alert on a consumer's account, they must notify the other two agencies. Once a fraud alert is placed, the file is removed from pre-screen lists for 2 years. Businesses must also shorten or truncate your account number information on electronically printed receipts. This is on the consumer copy only. Businesses still keep the entire account number and financial information on their copy. Credit bureaus must notify identity theft victims of their rights, and credit bureaus must notify identity theft victims of fraud alerts placed on their files. Victims have the right to block information in their credit reports resulting from fraud. Victims have the right to obtain copies of documents used to commit fraud. This is important while building a case. These documents, such as applications for credit and the identification documents used to commit the fraud. You have the right to dispute inaccuracies with creditors directly rather than initiating a dispute with the credit bureaus in question. Keep in mind, creditors are not required to check with credit agencies before issuing credit, and not all creditors report the extension of credit to the agencies. Therefore, if you have a fraudulent account opened with a creditor, that may not show up on your credit report, so you have the right to dispute directly with the creditor. For further information on these consumer protection laws, you can refer to Identity Lockdown, your step-by-step guide to identity theft protection, or you can visit the Federal Trade Commission at ftc.gov.